What's up guys, KalipezTech here, coming back at you with another video. Today, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A52 and the OnePlus Nord N100. So let's get started. So the Samsung Galaxy A52 has a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display with a 90Hz refresh rate. It's got a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 407, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 84.6%. We got a hole punch design here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 32 megapixels. Overall, it's a real solid design, looks really nice and modern, and the 90Hz refresh rate is good too because it makes the movement on the screen a lot smoother and easier on the eyes. As you can see here, it definitely does scroll a little bit faster than your average phone because most phones, even flagship phones like the iPhone, have a 60Hz refresh rate, so it's not necessarily bad, but movements on the screen like animations and videos and that sort of thing is going to be a little bit slower with that refresh rate versus a phone like the Samsung Galaxy A52 that has a 90Hz refresh rate, and the Samsung Galaxy A52 5G is actually even higher with 120Hz. So it definitely does make a difference for content consumption and that sort of thing. The OnePlus Nord N100 has a 6.52-inch IPS LCD display, also with a 90Hz refresh rate, a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 269, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 82.9%. So the resolution on this phone is a little bit lower than the resolution on the Samsung Galaxy A52, but I personally can't tell as much as I would think I would be able to. This phone, despite only being 720p, is actually really nice, and it's pretty notable that this phone specifically has a 90Hz refresh rate because it is only an IPS LCD display, not like a Super AMOLED, and it's only in 720p, so it is impressive, and the scrolling and movements on the screen is all really nice. So comparing them side by side, as expected with the Super AMOLED display, the Samsung Galaxy A52 definitely has brighter and stronger colors versus the OnePlus Nord N100 with only an IPS LCD display. It's not going to be quite as high quality, but that being said, the difference is actually less noticeable than I originally expected. Another thing to point out is that although the OnePlus Nord N100 technically has thicker bezels on paper, I don't really notice the difference that much. Even though the screen to body ratio on the A52 is noticeably higher, I do think it's just from this little part at the bottom here. The bezel is slightly thicker there. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same. In fact, I feel like it's even thinner on the sides on the OnePlus Nord N100 than it is on the A52. As far as the front-facing camera goes, we got the hole punch right here as well, and this camera is 8 megapixels. I gotta say, I really do like these hole punch designs for the front-facing cameras. A lot of phones still have water drop notches, and I think that look is really outdated. I'm definitely not a fan, whereas with the hole punch, it's a lot more modern looking, and I'm a big fan. So the Samsung Galaxy A52 is getting 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion. So it's really a lot of storage. You're most likely not going to run out of space on this unless you have a lot of photos and videos, mostly videos because those do take up a lot of space. But if that's the case, you can always use a microSD card, of course. And then as far as apps go, again, you're going to have a lot of apps and a lot of app data to even come close to using up all the storage. And I really like that about this phone. These days, even the system takes up quite a bit of storage, so having more than you think you need is a really good thing because it's better to have it and not need it than the other way around, needing it and not having it, because then you can't really do anything about it. The OnePlus Nord N100 is getting 64 gigabytes of internal storage, also with microSD card expansion. It's definitely not nearly as much as the A52, only half the storage capacity really. But you should still be pretty okay with 64 gigabytes. If you have a decent amount of apps and just take photos and videos for fun, basically personal use, then you should be fine. The only time you're really gonna have an issue with the storage on this phone is if you have a lot of really large apps or if you're starting to shoot a lot of photos and videos, which camera-wise, this phone's not capable of shooting in 4K. But again, with photos and videos, you can use the microSD card to expand the storage if that is the case. So it's not a huge deal, but if storage is really a priority for you, the Samsung Galaxy A52 is gonna have an advantage here. Unfortunately, neither of these phones have wireless charging, but both of them have not only a fingerprint scanner, but also face unlock. For the Samsung Galaxy A52, we got the fingerprint scanner on the display. It looks really nice and works even better. Let's try that one more time. I really like the look of this fingerprint scanner. Having it on the display of the phone to me has always looked so modern. There are some placements of a fingerprint scanner, mostly just on the power button, that are a little bit faster and more convenient than having it in the display, but I think the look of an in-display fingerprint scanner outweighs the slight convenience benefit of having it on the power button or really anywhere externally. So I'm a big fan of how this one's set up. The OnePlus Nord N100 has a fingerprint scanner not in the display, but right here on the back in this middle spot right here. Pretty much the location of a classic fingerprint scanner back when they were really first being introduced to smartphones. They did put most of them in that spot. Let's go ahead and give this one a try and see how it works. Real nice, one more time. All right, there we go. So as you can probably tell, I am biased in favor of the in-display fingerprint scanner, but I'm gonna be honest here, this one is noticeably faster. When you're using the in-display fingerprint scanner, there's just a tiny bit of lag while it reads your fingerprint, as well as that little animation. But with the external fingerprint scanner, it's basically instant. There's no lag at all. It just unlocks the second your finger touches it. Now, I personally think it's so close that I don't really care a whole lot about the difference in functionality. But if you want the fastest fingerprint scanner possible, then the OnePlus Nord N100 is going to have an advantage because it is objectively a little bit better. But if you're like me and just like the look of the in-display fingerprint scanner a lot, then the A52 still does a really good job. And of course, in my opinion, it looks a whole lot better. Now we're going to take a look at the rear camera setups of each phone. With the Samsung Galaxy A52, we have a 64 megapixel rear camera, a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. So pretty much everything you would expect from a smartphone of this class. There's really nothing that it doesn't have except maybe a telephoto lens. Usually that feature is more of a flagship feature, but Samsung actually recently introduced a telephoto lens to the Samsung Galaxy A72. So I was pleasantly surprised to find out that it actually is becoming more of a thing for phones that aren't flagship phones. So if you are interested in a phone that does have a telephoto lens, but isn't quite a flagship phone, then I would suggest checking out the Samsung Galaxy A72 because it does have that feature. But other than that, the Samsung Galaxy A52 does have pretty much every camera feature, which is really impressive. With the OnePlus Nord N100, we're getting a 13 megapixel rear camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So not quite as many different lenses as the Samsung Galaxy A52. It doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, which is a bit of a bummer. But the slightly higher end counterpart of this phone, the OnePlus Nord N10 5G, does have an ultra-wide camera. So if you are interested in a OnePlus phone that has an ultra-wide camera, that is an option. But as far as this phone goes, even though it doesn't have an ultra-wide camera, it does have a triple camera setup, so pretty much everything else. So that's good for that. So these pictures were taken by the rear camera of each phone. I do think that both of them are really good quality. I was actually pleasantly surprised by the picture taken by the OnePlus Nord N100. This camera is only 13 megapixels, and the phone is a little bit of a step down from a phone of the level of the A52, and the pictures actually look surprisingly similar, but the A52 definitely is a step up. The colors, as you can see here, are so much brighter and a lot more powerful, and the details are really nice. I would even compare the Samsung Galaxy A52's photos to some of the flagship phones because this is surprisingly good. I was not expecting the photos to be this high quality from the A52. Its predecessor, the Samsung Galaxy A51, does take really good pictures. In fact, I record videos with the A51 for this channel all the time, but the Samsung Galaxy A52 is a clear step up from the A51, so I'm really impressed by that. But overall, if you're looking for a phone that can take the best pictures you can get, I would say the Samsung Galaxy A52 is going to be the better of these two. But if you just take a couple photos here and there just for fun, and it's not really too important, the OnePlus Nord N100 is still really good. It's perfect for a casual social media post every now and then, but there is a clear difference in the quality here. These pictures were taken by the front-facing camera of each phone, and the quality difference is definitely more apparent in these pictures. On one hand, we got the OnePlus Nord N100 that has a really clear glare. The colors are a little bit dull, and the details are definitely not very pronounced. The shadows are kind of all over the place. They're a little bit hard to see, and overall the photo quality is just generally not very impressive. I wouldn't use this front-facing camera for a whole lot. Maybe something like Snapchat where the quality doesn't really matter. But if you're trying to post a really high quality selfie anywhere, the OnePlus Nord N100 might be a little bit disappointing for that. On the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy A52 has again exceeded my expectations. This photo taken by the front-facing camera is super impressive. Not only is there no glare, it's crystal clear, but the little details like the colors and the shadows are really good. The background is slightly blurred, which I didn't even have it in portrait mode. It just naturally focused like that. So overall, this photo, despite being taken by a front-facing camera, which is usually not as good as the rear camera of any phone, looks super professional, and I'd be comfortable using a photo of this quality in pretty much anything. Now, as far as video mode goes, the difference you saw in the rear cameras and the front-facing cameras are going to be pretty much the same. Now, if we're talking about ability, the Samsung Galaxy A52 can shoot 4K in both the rear and front cameras, and the OnePlus Nord N100 can't shoot 4K at all. Now, even if taking videos is going to be a primary function for your phone, still not everybody shoots videos in 4K. A lot of people still just shoot them in 1080p, but if you do want the best of the best quality and you want the option to shoot in 4K if you feel like it, the A52 is going to have the advantage because the OnePlus Nord N100 can't do that at all. Now, internally, the Samsung Galaxy A52 is getting 6 GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 538 and a multi-core score of 1559. So it's definitely decent for a mid-level phone, especially. To put this into perspective, this is about the same type of processing power as a flagship phone that was made in maybe 2016 or 2017. The Samsung Galaxy Note 8, for example, has a multi-core score in the 1500s, as does this. So that really gives you an idea of where we're at. It's not really that powerful in comparison to the new flagship phones these days, but for a mid-level phone, it is decent. You're gonna be able to do most tasks as far as web browsing, social media. Then if you want to get into a little bit of gaming, if you're doing something that doesn't have super complicated graphics, that should be completely fine. In video editing, if the files aren't huge, then again, you should be fine. But if you really need a lot of extra processing power, the phone's still going to be able to do most things, but it might struggle just a little bit once you get into those more demanding tasks. The OnePlus Nord N100 is getting 4 GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 460 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone as well. This one came back with a single core score of 251 and a multi-core score of 1172. So in comparison, definitely not nearly as powerful as the Samsung Galaxy A52, but it's still not bad. If you're just doing basic tasks like social media, web browsing, basic phone functions, even lightweight gaming that doesn't have complicated graphics or take up too much RAM, that should be okay. If you're editing a video quickly on some sort of little mobile app that's not too long, then again, you should be fine. There's really not a whole lot the OnePlus Nord N100 can't do that the Samsung Galaxy A52 can. It's just that with this phone, it might be a little bit slower. When it comes to battery, the OnePlus Nord N100 is going to have a little bit of an advantage with the 5,000 mAh battery supporting 18-watt fast charging versus the Samsung Galaxy A52 with the 4,500 mAh battery supporting 25-watt fast charging. So it really depends on your needs whether or not this is going to matter. If you're generally near a charger throughout most of your day and keep your phone plugged in when you can, then this isn't really going to matter for you and you should be fine with either phone. It's not really going to make a difference. But if you're on the go a lot and can't always get to a charger, but still need to use your phone throughout the day, the OnePlus Nord N100 is going to have its advantages because a 5,000 milliamp hour battery is basically the biggest battery you can get. Now that being said, a 4,500 milliamp hour battery is still not bad at all. I would still consider the battery a pro for the Samsung Galaxy A52, in fact, because a 4,500 milliamp hour battery is still really big. It sure is a whole lot better than the iPhone 12's battery at 2,815 milliamp hours. So it's definitely not to say the A52 has a small battery, but if battery life is one of your main priorities, this is definitely something to keep in mind because it's still gonna make a difference. Maybe not a whole lot, but still, first of all, the life per charge, that goes without saying. But also, if you prefer to keep the phone you get for a really long time, then the OnePlus Nord N100 is going to have an advantage there, because over time, as the battery degrades, which all batteries do, with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, it's probably going to degrade a little bit slower than the Samsung Galaxy A52 with the 4,500 milliamp hour battery. So at the end of the day, it really depends on your needs and the way you use your phone. Now, in conclusion, which one of these phones is better? In almost every aspect, the Samsung Galaxy A52 is better. It's simply a step up from the OnePlus Nord N100. Now, this does come with a price difference, so keep that in mind. The Samsung Galaxy A52, as of right now, is almost double the price of the OnePlus Nord N100. So definitely take into consideration the benefits of owning the Samsung Galaxy A52 versus the OnePlus Nord N100, and decide for yourself whether or not that's worth it. Now, for current pricing and availability, definitely check the links in the description because this stuff is always changing. But that being said, the Samsung Galaxy A52 has a much better display. A Super AMOLED display is gonna outclass an IPS LCD. The colors are gonna be so much brighter, and the resolution of this display is higher. Not only that, but the A52 has double the storage, a faster processor, and a significantly more powerful camera. Now, a couple advantages the OnePlus Nord N100 does have. It has a better fingerprint scanner in terms of functionality, so there's that. And the battery is a tiny bit bigger. Now, another thing to keep in mind is the A52 has more features that the OnePlus Nord N100 doesn't have, like NFC and dust and water resistance. So at the end of the day, I would consider the Samsung Galaxy A52 to be a step up from the OnePlus Nord N100. But if you value battery life and want a slightly faster fingerprint scanner, the OnePlus Nord N100 is gonna have a little bit of an advantage there. And both of these devices are really good. I would say if you're only gonna do more basic activities, aren't too big on taking pictures, maybe take a couple here and there for social media and more for fun stuff, and don't do a whole lot of high performance activities like gaming and photo and video editing, then the OnePlus Nord N100 is really all you're gonna need. You probably wouldn't get that much value out of having a higher level device, but if you're getting into those more high performance activities, or if your camera features are really important to you and you want a better display, if you do heavy content consumption and that sort of thing, then the Samsung Galaxy A52 is gonna be the better device for you. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.